So yeah, we are here in Silverstone, filming day for the RB20. It's a bit of a rainy day, but we did get a few laps done, and yeah, everything felt normal, felt good. And that is of course the most important for today.
Red Bull have yet again turned out the team to beat in the pre-season testing, but after not topping the timesheets on the second and third day of practice, few believe that there would be a chance for them to fight the Austrian team at least for race wins, if not championships. But after the latest statements from Verstappen, as well as the general belief of their rivals when it comes to hiding performance, Red Bull could be in for a perfect season, and this could be prolonged till 2025 as well. So, is the Austrian team an automatic lock-up until the 2026 regulations hit? And if so, how will that affect the sport's popularity? It's safe to say that Red Bull are pretty much dominating the sport in a vast matter right now. And the fact that they won all but one race last year is a statement that not many teams were able to make in their dominant days. However, it seems like the pre-season testing, one in which they've established stability and gathered all the data they need, was run with lower engine specifications and modes than its rivals. If this is true, then Red Bull are deliberately hiding pace for the upcoming race weekend in Bahrain, where all cards would be revealed and there won't be any more sandbagging. On top of that, Red Bull have been reported to run the RB20 with additional fuel load, which gave the chassis an extra weight compared to other teams. Theoretically, this should put Red Bull in a much worse position due to the overweight of the car. And what it did is it just served the purpose exactly as planned, suggesting that the car could be doing even greater times once the season starts in Bahrain. But although this is a sight that the Red Bull fans would completely enjoy, it's not something that would fit the sport. First of all, Red Bull has chosen a direction quite contrary to what they've done in the past 2 years and have led the entire grid to follow the path of the RB19, just for them to pull an absolute checkmate of a move. Verstappen said that the car does exactly what he wants it to do, and after we've seen Lambiase's evil laugh in the paddock when Max set the fastest time, I guess there's nothing much the rest of the grid should be looking at. All of the teams reported to be making huge gains over the winter, and their simulator results have transferred on the track. However, the step that Red Bull made is quite huge, and even with a brand new direction and philosophy of the car, it's still baffling to understand how the team makes everything work with such ease. On top of that, if the rumours are to be believed, and the team didn't run the engine to its fullest performance, then we're in for a very monotonous season in which Verstappen could be winning all of the races of the campaign, as the other teams would be more or less focused on developing the 2026 challenges, considering the fact that 2025 would see very similar challenges to the 2024 one. But is Red Bull really sandbagging? And what do other teams think about the pace that the Austrian team has promoted during the pre-season testing? Obviously, you cannot always understand these results with complete accuracy, because different squads have different goals. For example, Mercedes collected race pace data, and they didn't run as many qualifying laps with low fuel specs as you'd originally anticipate. And the fact that they were happy with the results they got, as well as the reaction of the front wing with the airflow of the car, shows sparks of hope that we can see the W15 fight for race wins a bit more frequently than what we did in the past couple of years. It's definitely not just that. When you observe the car, you can see the vertical inlets of the side pods that were assumed to have a similar function to the bypass induct introduced on the SF24. In reality, while it does this function, it's much more on a secondary level, and the primary goal of these vertical inlets is to feed the turbocharger cooling. The cooler is placed at floor level, and it rests on it, while the vertical inlet sends air to it through a special duct. A very interesting solution because it's an extreme version of the V-shaped longitudinal radiator position, similar to what we've seen in recent years. The fact that the cooler is placed at floor level has another very important meaning hidden behind it. It counterbalances the position of the radiators at the top of the side pods. This is vastly important because all aerodynamicists prefer to have little to no effect from the presence of the radiators, with Marco adding that Newey's perfect wish would be not to have any radiators at all. Max Verstappen has opened up about the pre-season testing in general, and while he finished around 0.4 of a second slower than Leclerc on the last day of testing, with just 66 laps throughout the entire day, it's worth noting that he set this time on a harder compound tyre compared to the Ferrari driver. Adding to the primary focus of Red Bull, Verstappen went on to say, "Today we made the plan to not focus on pure lap time. I think it was more important just to get the long running done and then get a bit more of an understanding of the car. So we focused on that program and to be honest, I think it all looked quite positive. I'm quite happy with the car, how it was behaving. And then when we head into the race weekend, it's about fine-tuning the balance around the circumstances that you face throughout the weekend. However, Red Bull have also acknowledged the risk they're taking by moving to a more extreme zeropod design from Suzuka onwards, when they're supposed to totally close the vertical inlets of the side pods and introduce a version that Mercedes dubbed as a failure in the past couple of years. The demotivating thing for the other teams is that this is actually the most efficient concept in extracting the maximum amount of downforce from the car. The issue with Mercedes was that they had it in a non-controlling manner, which caused the instability and excessive bouncing of the car. Now, considering the fact that Red Bull are geniuses when it comes to the aerodynamics of the car, it's not that far-fetched of a scenario to guess that they have a couple of aces in their sleeves when it comes to further developing this concept and make an extremely fast-paced car. If this is the case, then Red Bull would have completed the best mission since their existence: build a car that many have given up on years ago, after leading the entire grid to build what would be considered a copy of the RB19, a car that Red Bull didn't want to develop any further because they would have been left vulnerable, according to Newey. McLaren have also opened up on the current situation with Red Bull, and it seems like while the hype of the Woking-based squad catching up to the Austrian team was high after the consistent results the team brought in the second half of 2023, that has been simmered down very quick from Stellar's latest statement. When talking about this to a further extent, the team principal of McLaren said, "I have to say, when I saw the car, I was like, wow, they certainly were brave in changing some of the shapes that made that car so successful last year. I think they could enjoy such an advantage last year that it gave them confidence from a timeline point of view to take some risks, because you can take these risks early on to actually see whether it works." Red Bull have developed two elements. The first one is the significant evolution of that car that certainly required time to be developed, and the second element is performance itself. It looks like they're very strong. So it looks like what they wanted to achieve from a design point of view also delivered what I would say predominantly seems to be aerodynamic performance. Even Russell, who praised Mercedes for making such a great step during the winter period, spoke about whether or not his team has what it takes to put themselves ahead of the Austrian team. And according to the Brit, the tempo is still narrated by Red Bull. The upgrades that they've made, as well as the improvements in the cooling area, are something that is poised to put Red Bull above everybody else on another level, with a very different, yet quite uncatchable standard. As Horner himself said that his engineers have come up with very innovative solutions, and if you remain to be conservative, then you'll be eventually taking a massive step back in the sport. So with all this in mind, do you think that Red Bull have deliberately slowed down during pre-season testing in order to hide their true performance? Let us know in the comments down below.